But like I think it really matters how you started your company, and maybe you
With who?
inherited your company. Like initially, what was the drive before starting it? And it's different when you, I guess, inherit some business and selling it afterwards, or quitting, or leaving, or whatever, destroying, or making it grow, versus starting something, I don't know, from scratch with a concrete plan that you're gonna do only 5 conferences. Like, I don't know, I guess with
Welcome. Oh my God. Welcome to the messy middle, post Techtalia.
Oh my
Frank and I
God.
are Frank and I are both sick. It
I'm
was a
not 20 anymore.
no,
Done.
no. It was a fantastic event. I mean, we had 121 people. Teddy, we missed you. We really missed you
Yeah.
there. You would have
I
loved it.
know, I know.
Um,
I'm not sure. We had everything was great, but the one thing missing was internet. Like, don't go to France if you want to
Oh,
work. It
what
was
happened with
like,
the internet? You
no, we
guys were
had
so
internet in the
silent.
venue, Frank.
No
We had
you never
pictures,
knew. You never knew.
nothing.
No, Techtalia was great. I'm just saying the rest. Like, as soon as you step out, like, I don't know why, but Florence has the
I
edge.
did it
I
on
never had
purpose.
edge before in years.
I did it on purpose so that you would stay in the venue all day and not
Yeah.
leave. But no, it was fantastic. And I think the segue of Techtalia being so amazing is kind of this idea of when you're at the peak of a project that you've worked on, and lots of post-exit founders have been in this position after selling companies and then figuring
All of
out
them.
all of them. But what I'm saying is even in the position of where you've sold multiple things and you're working on your next thing, and you decide maybe it's time to find the reason to end this thing. Um, and I've been feeling that way for a while now, and I haven't made any decisions. So please do not take this as a statement that Techtalia is over and by any means publicly. But when you do something incredible and you hit a peak, we did 5 events over 4.5, I think 5 years, 4 different cities in Europe. We've had multiple public company
In
CEO
Italy.
in Italy, excuse me, in Italy. Oh God, I'm exhausted.
It's in Europe. Your statement was correct,
Well,
but
my
I
statement's
assumed
correct, but it was only across Italy, not across Europe. Rome,
Techtalia Dublin.
Rome, Venice, Florence, Milan,
Milan,
Milan.
Venice,
Yeah, but what was it? Rome, Milan, Venice,
Rome.
Florence. I mean,
Remote Rome, yeah,
so
Milan
what's
from.
next? And I think why this is an interesting conversation to have, and I don't think we should be specific about Techtalia or any things that we're
No, no.
working on, but it's mostly how do post-exit founders do this, Frank? I mean, like, what do we do?
I mean, we can all talk about our experience. To me, at least if we take it from a high level, I guess there's different scenario. There's the scenario where usually, I mean, the good founders are not post-exit founders, right? The good founders are the one who never go public and they die with their company. It's like the
It's
Steve
true.
Jobs of here. The thing is, there's like 10 of them.
Yeah,
For
yeah,
so
yeah.
and everybody hopes to be like that. The reality is that you start, you have a motivation, and then a couple of things can happen. One is you have a choice and you have a luxury to say, what should I do? Um, and there's also the case where you don't have a choice. The company is at the point where you need to exit. And then there's the in between where the company's still alive forever, but will never raise money again if you raised before. And that's kind of a zombie. And so different cause, different ways to manage it. The way you can manage these things, I guess, is one, you can step out and and just have the team keep growing it, and it's fine. Um, I think the second one is you can sell it, um, to someone like for an acquisition or something like that. The last one is you can crash it. That happens.
Well,
If you don't have any solution, then you have to close it and you have to deal with that. So
and to
so
be
again, like maybe we can go into these different things, and then I can talk about things I've been through, and maybe Teddy
yeah,
also.
yeah. I think that's fair, and I think this is probably going to be a two-part episode because the idea is just stopping something. And I think the second episode is the idea of finding somebody to take it
Yeah.
over and continuing it in a capacity that's
Let's
not. But let's focus on just
let's
stopping
start
and
let's start with the idea that you it's a choice, so it's not something that you are imposed by the market. I think, if you're at the point where you say, should I still do that or not? It means some things need to change. So either you're gonna change the way the company is, so it fits more who you are and what you do, or either you have to transition and let the company go. So maybe we can talk about these two scenarios, and maybe Teddy until
So
Teddy
like,
comes back.
I think my experience with this in the early days was always that the decision was not made for me. I would say my first two companies, I basically was pushed out. And that was with the one that I did, in the music industry. It
Which,
was,
by the way, I would never take personally because I had to push
no.
people out, and it's never like I don't like that person. It's just like it doesn't make sense anymore.
Yep.
Um, and you could be that person too. And to me, that's just business happens.
Yep. Yep. And I think, but when I was, going through it, I took it very personally. But let's say that one's a difficult one to go through. And if you're a post-exit founder, a lot of the times, you know, you experience that, right? And I think,
So let's be precise. So because now we have experience, so we don't need to be like, okay, there's emotion, there's a bunch of things, but what are the options? There's going to be 3, 4 options on how to deal with these things. We should talk about what they are and how you choose which one.
yep.
So, for example, in your case, like the first case, like what was your option and which one you picked?
So for the first choice of like when I was able to actually make a decision on it versus somebody else deciding for me. So that was when I was doing something called Curator, and I knew it was over when, I mentioned this in the past. I knew it was over when I spent too much money. I couldn't figure out how to launch the product properly, and I didn't want to do it anymore. And I just told my investors, it's over. Here's an email based on what happened. You can take a loss, and it was tough, but it was the adult thing to do. Um, the second time was with Gamma when I knew I had to sell it based on the crypto market crashing, and that was a very conscious decision of finding somebody to buy it. And I very
And you
aggressively,
did, which
and I did,
was
I
great.
did. And then
And
the
it was a
last,
good sell for everybody. So
yeah, and the last one was the SPAC, where we also had no choice because the team was tired, I was tired. We extended as far as we could. We covered every
yeah,
single,
couldn't find targets.
yeah, but we still sold it. So I think I have a knack for selling. I actually also have a knack for when I'm thrown out of something, I can sell my shares. So I think I've always been able to be okay, and I think that's what makes a good post-exit founder and of course a serial entrepreneur. And I agree with you that the best entrepreneurs are the ones that don't sell their companies, or when they IPO, they keep their shares and it goes in a family trust.
I don't think. Let me rephrase. I'm not saying that you're a bad entrepreneur if you have to. What I
No,
mean is, it's the alignment of planet of being a good entrepreneur and having a good story is then you're going to keep driving. Not going to be
right,
sad.
right, right. Um, Teddy, did we get your side
Am I
to
back?
work okay, or is it?
Yeah, so first I want to say that I absolutely hate Riverside. I mean, I've been trying to make it work
They're
for a
not a
very long time.
sponsor.
You should
Absolutely
sell.
not. Please, if anyone has any better solution idea, just please let me know. And I reached out to like on Twitter, and the CEO apparently reached out in my DMs, and then he never gotten back to me. So I actually hope for this company to be good, but they kind of sucks. Every time we record, we need to re-record, and it just freezes all the time.
It's
It's
horrible.
shit. It's
It's
horrible.
shit. It's
Yes.
shit. Riverside, if you hear this,
And I'm gonna cut this clip and just post it on Twitter because it's fucking
I
sucks.
feel
And I
like
thought it's my Chrome
this
tabs,
might
but
make us
right
go
now,
viral.
why
I feel
not?
like we should try to code our own Riverside in a weekend with
Like cursor
Cursor.
AI, yeah. And
Yeah,
I thought
let's do
it
let's do
was
all the
my.
module and then we give it for
Initially,
free
I
to
thought
the
it's
world.
the app that they released, but that's even worse. And then I thought it's my Chrome because I have thousands of tabs, which is fine. But then I closed Chrome, and right now it's
Yeah.
like only one tab and still doesn't work. So
And
like,
I thought it was Italy. I thought it was Italy.
yeah,
Remember,
I
we
thought
met
it's your
last week
connection.
and we had all these
Yeah.
issues, and I'm imperfect. So I think this,
It could be that I'm recording from my side. That's always
but it
happening from my
shouldn't be,
side.
but
But
it
like,
shouldn't.
it shouldn't. It's terrible experience.
Yeah, terrible. So what's your thinking on the topic at hand?
I wasn't even following. I was so frustrated trying to make this thing work, and I was texting you
No, we were
guys in
just
the chat.
for a recap. So for everybody in our
Yeah,
audience, Riverside is not a sponsor. We are going to leave this clip in here.
We have the opposite. What's
We're
the opposite of a
I'm
sponsor?
sorry. I mean,
Someone you
yeah.
pay.
when
Someone
you
you
hate.
pay and it's not even working.
So
Yeah.
Teddy, I was discussing how there's when I've sold the companies or sold my shares, I've done okay. And the end was usually decided not by me earlier in my career, but later in
Mm,
my career, which by career I mean in my 20s, it wasn't decided by me, but in my 30s, so since I turned 30, which is I sold Gamma at 30, um, it's been decided by me. By meaning like, even though it doesn't
mm.
work, I made the decision to end the thing and sell it. Versus in my 20s, all of the situations where I was able to successfully sell some shares to make money, I was fired or whatever, told to leave. So,
And
and so there's three ways to do
is
it,
the
right?
conversation around you making the decision versus someone else for you, or is it more like how do you know when to say no and quit?
I don't think it's not how do I know when to say no and to quit. It's when you know the end is near and it's going to happen.
Mm,
Yeah.
Um,
There's different, I mean, again, there's different scenarios. Like, I had a weird one, I guess, with Massive where we had to launch the company. We launched multiple startups at the same time with this idea of testing the studio model. We found a CEO. We had a tough dynamic with a CEO, which often happened for studio. And as I was dealing with that, I got a call from my sister who tells me my dad is sick. And so suddenly it's like, it wasn't business at all. You have to deal with personal stuff and you have to make choices also based on that. But again, to me, my approach is as soon as I'm a founder, as soon as I create a company, to me, the company doesn't belong to me. It's more like a child that I want to outgrow me. Um, and I kind of do the same with Electis, where I launched Electis, like co-founded it with Gilles, I built everything. But I can be also useful at a capacity that, if I'm far away from it, it's not gonna kill Electis, which to me is reassuring. So I think, I'm the type of founder who tries to get itself out of a job, but do a good job at putting the right DNA in the
right
company
people.
so it keep growing. And then once in a while, I can step back in and work on some strategy or some choices, which I think at the end, honestly, when the company is very big, which I never experienced, but I can imagine. And I think Bezos mentioned that, when you're an executive of a company, your job is to make one or two good decisions a year.
Yeah.
And so I think you have also to deal with that. And I think that type of thing is an example of a decision you can do. You can also merge. So there's a lot of complexity here. It can be very creative, right? You could merge with another company, your company, and then build a new company. You could absorb another one. You could be absorbed by another one. And all these things, like, it's not like one scenario. Like, the way you manage an M&A is very unique every time. And there's a millions way of managing M&A, and most of them will fail too.
but
So
they'll fail. Yeah, but they'll fail post M&A. A lot of the M&A process also
I
fails.
disagree. So I disagree with that. I understand what you say. But I think of it. I think of M&A like Steve Blank, where we think of M&A. I think from the financial and the transaction point of view, where the M&A ends the day the contract is signed. To me, I think of the M&A as the M&A of what happened after too,
No, 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 no,
where
no.
the team need to merge or a
We're not
product needs to
disagreeing.
work.
We're not disagreeing on the fact that the
Okay,
M&A
okay.
fails after. I would say the M&A more than 50% of the time was a worthless acquisition for the company unless they wanted to just kill that startup. For the founder, a lot of the times, even if the M&A fails at the end, once the contract is signed, they still get the money. Now, you have to decide, do you feel good about that or not? And
Hmm.
I didn't ask the question, during Techtalia to Federico Marchetti, who founder of Ukes, Net-a-Porter. They just sold Richemont just sold Ukes Net-a-Porter to My Teresa. And I think it was definitely Richemont lost money on the deal and he's not involved. And so the question is, if he sees that company disappear, does he feel upset about it or, does it matter? He already created it, already went to the
These are
top.
these are again very complex. The idea of measuring if something is lost or not. Let's take Microsoft acquisition of Skype. And if Skype disappeared, but the team might have stayed, I'm sure some of them were involved in the creation of team. Uh, it's like economics. It's really hard to measure
Yeah, but which
the
acquisition of
economic
Skype?
outcome of
Frank,
an
there were
M&A. Like
two.
you can,
Which
huh?
acquisition of Skype? There were two, because it was first bought by eBay, then it was bought back from the Skype founders, and then
Yeah.
sold to Microsoft.
What I mean is the reality of this thing is it's difficult to measure. You can measure the product Skype and then conclude that it failed, or then you can measure the implication of what happened with it, and that's impossible to measure. So,
Absolutely.
so it's quite interesting. It's like, do like these things are. It's hard to know if it works or not. I guess the way you say it is the valuation after went up, and then the only way you would have to know is to look at a company equivalent to Microsoft who didn't buy Skype and see if their valuation went down. But it's difficult. That's more like economic science. But anyway, like, so back to the subject. So you're a founder. You're running your company, and you're at a point where whether something is forced out of you for personal reason, for business reason, or you just don't feel like it, like you want to transition out. Um, then again, I think the process is anyone in your team can take over.
But
Uh, yeah,
I don't want to get. I don't think we should get into that this week. There's a
okay.
lot to talk about there.
It's a lot. It's a very vast
I
subject.
think we save that for next week, because we're also, trying to make these shorter. What I wanted to
Mm.
focus on really is we're post-exit founders. This advice should be for post-exit founders over the next 10 minutes.
Mm.
First-time founders, you need to go through this as trial by fire. And every time M&A is hard, but the first time you do M&A, the second and third time you do it, the things that make it easier, but it doesn't make it any easier because new things pop up. Like with the SPAC, if you guys remember, when I was selling the SPAC, and people redeemed shares. I don't know if you remember this. Last year, we had like 190 or maybe $250 million in redemptions for the SPAC, that went back to people. And the group that was doing the redemption screwed up, and they gave everybody too little amount of money, not too much. If they gave you too much amount of money, you can't ever get it back. And by too much, too little, by too much, by too little, excuse me, it was like 5 cents too less, or 2 cents less for over shareholders that had $300 or $250 million of redemptions. So it was like $1.5 million that was owed to these people, and it was just
Yeah.
interest, right?
No, and you remind me, talking. You're very right to say, it's hard for everybody. I remember when Startup Weekend acquired or merged with Startup America, and we did this thing of global, and it was difficult. Like, how do we integrate that team that's very different all across the state? I remember my co-founder Mark was mentioning that at the board, and our chairman, who happened to be Steve Case, the founder of AOL, said, "Oh, you could have asked me. I could have told you that M&A are difficult." And we all laughed. It was very funny because he did the largest M&A in the world. And yeah, they're always difficult. But to your point, I guess as a P, for a post-exit founder is just an option. Then he becomes like, who should be the target? Who
Yeah.
who should be selling to? What are the options if there's even options? But there's also the other thing of, again, like you might just change management and keep the thing running if that's an
Yep.
option. Because and you're going through that too, I guess, Gabriel, right? Which is
I know, but I said we
you
want
don't
to
want.
talk about this next week.
No, that's fine, that's fine. But what I mean is, in general, you don't want something you start to lose what it is. And so
Right.
if you can,
Right.
sometimes if it's about making a lot of money or keeping your vision and sweat and tears alive, there's still a transaction cost where it's better to still be welcome in the thing you launched, and still stay around and make a little bit less money, maybe,
Yeah.
than just leaving.
Look at the founder of TED. He sold TED after it was a pretty successful conference. Nowhere near as successful once Chris Anderson took over and made it into the big thing it is. But they kept a relationship, and he saw his vision go from a great event,
To media.
yep, to the biggest, technology, education, design event in the world. And I think when we think about it from a post-exit sort of founder point of view, when you do your second thing, third thing, and you wanted to keep going, that is an option from a legacy standpoint, because we all do it for different reasons. A lot of the times it is, in our situation, because we're post-exit founders that have not had major economic exits, we're doing it, yes, for doing something different, but also to make some money. But that doesn't mean we're going to sell
Oh,
and let somebody take it
But
over
there's
who's an
yeah, and
asshole.
again, there's another case we didn't explore, which is you don't give up,
Oh
and
yeah,
yeah.
you're not the one who want to sell. You're not the one who wants to change anything. You know, it's hard, but you're like, somehow I'm gonna go through.
but you
Which
but
is
you
also important. There's this time, when it's like just the worst case is the company die, but you're still gonna take the risk.
yeah, yeah. I'll
Let
give you an
me
example
let me
for
just
Lars.
try to add some value to the conversation if possible, because not just
I'm
ranting
not sure
against
if
Riverside.
Riverside lets you.
Yeah.
Oh no,
Hopefully
Teddy.
Riverside won't block me. But like I think it really matters how you started your company, and maybe you
Ufu.
inherited your company. Like initially, what was the drive before starting it? And it's different when you, I guess, inherit some business and selling it afterwards, or quitting, or leaving, or whatever, destroying or making it grow, versus starting something, I don't know, from scratch with a concrete plan that you're going to do only 5 conferences. Like, I don't know, I guess with Techtalia, Gabriel, at one point, maybe you mentioned that you're going to do 5 or 6. When you have something like, you have a goal and then you reach that goal and then it's over and then you can end it. Or it's a different game when you start something. With my experience with G6, I used to use that name G6 when I was even in high school, doing back in the day when MP3s were legal. You would record CDs for people with music, and then I would sign everything with G6, G6 production, G6 this, G6
FBI.
that. So it became part of my identity, and it wasn't easy to like disconnect myself from the brand. So they're very different types of feelings, I guess, depending on how you started, or you versus you inherited something, or you have concrete plan. Um, I, Again, I don't know the answers. For me, leaving that journey was really hard, because again, it was really part of my identity, and I've tried to do that transition as smooth as possible to sort of still remain connected, and I am still connected to the brand, which made things easier. But I even right now when I talk about G6, it still feels really personal. It's a big part of my life, and I spent like, I don't know, 13, 14 officially, and maybe more years actually grew up with that idea of having that company. So yeah, these are kind of my 2 cents on the topic.
So I think as we think this through, there's lots of options, and when you know you want to end it, company, not anything else, company. Be, I would say, take your time and think it through, and give yourself some space. Frank, the other option of continuing in, a sort of sense of, it's a duty. I think that only works for a little bit, and there's certain personalities that really can handle that. I can for like a year, but beyond that, my output's not great. And what I would say was worked with Lars Rasmussen, the creator of Google Maps, right? And he did that company Weave, if you remember. It was at first a sex toy, and then became a running app. Peloton offered to buy them, and I think for a lot of money, shares, and they said no. And the reason why he said no was he didn't want to go work at Peloton, because he had enough money, and Peloton would only buy them because it's the guy who created Google Maps, which makes sense.
The Quayer.
I think he made the right decision for himself. I think he did not make the right decision for the team or his
Of a
investors.
team. Yeah.
And I think the
It's
team,
funny. It's funny you talk about that too, because usually what you hear is people who say no, and then they go to court for like 100x later and be like, "Oh, we were very brave and we said no." But no one really talks about the one who said no, and that was it.
they got fucked. They lost all of the investors' money that I brought in. My
Yeah.
friend, I lost my friend 100,000. I lost my other friend 100,000. And this was supposed to be a done deal because it's the guy who created Google Maps. And to this day, I think about it and I'm like, why didn't the dude just say yes and spend a year there? Like, you could say yes and leave after 6 months. What do you, I mean, they're not gonna, and I think you know,
I understand
that,
it's the freedom, but at the same time,
yeah, but
again,
it shows that's why
we go back to the sense of duty, right? Which is like you
it's a
could
sense
help
of duty.
people, you could be, yeah. It's
It's a sense
different
of duty.
culture or education,
Yeah.
maybe. Oh,
And the funny thing is I don't know when he does keynotes today if he mentions, what happened, but they did hand over the company to a new CEO, and that CEO ran the company into the ground, and he gave the company like another million or $2 million, and it's just like they lit it up on fire. And I think at the time what he should have done was, instead of giving the new CEO $2 million and reinvesting, he should have just said, "Look, I'll buy everybody out for $2 million. You'll lose all your money, but at least you get something."
mm.
And I think the problem is when you have too much money and you don't want to do something, and you get an offer like, I think it was like 50 million bucks or something in shares, like, and you only raised 5 million bucks. Maybe it would have been good to do it. Now, look at how Peloton ended up. Not great. But
Yeah.
I think this is an interesting scenario of a post-exit founder who made a lot of money, not once but twice, Google and Facebook, um, and just made that personal decision. And reputationally, it doesn't do anything. So you know, and everybody on the team is still friends with him. So maybe the moral of the story is make a lot of money and create a product that everybody likes, and you're forgiven.
Yeah.
I have a quote, and then we can end.
Yeah, it's a quote. Frank, did you get a quote from the Techtalia dinner?
I forgot what it was.
I think I've got one, which let's see
Save
if
it
I
for
can
the next
find
time.
it.
I have one for now because I also
Oh,
have to.
great, Teddy, do it.
Yeah, so it's from Maya Angelou. It says, do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And I think it's also relevant for this conversation because, like, at a time when you have to make a decision, you have to do the best you know at that point. And if there's something better in the future, but it's unknown to you, there's nothing you can do about it. Once you know that there's something better in the future, you can deal with it differently.
Yep.
Yeah.
Till next week. This was a great conversation.
Bye.
Bye.